Follow the buzzer. Rest in peace. Woo! The best there is, the best there was, and the best ever will be. What you gonna do, brother? Hey, yo.
Can you see me now?
Strategy my Oklahoma ass.
Life sucks, and then you die.
Welcome to the JM Report. I'm your host, GoodOlJM, and this is episode 63, coming to you from CSP Studios in Tampa, Florida, the birthplace of pro wrestling. And I don't know why I always sound or start the show off like that after that brief intro. But we do have an interesting and a lot of stories and news to talk about here. Of course, last Friday's Super Showdown, Shobi no Money 2, is already in the history books, and besides from the fans, even internal negative feedback has come out. And yes, I will discuss the unfortunate debacle of the Goldberg versus Undertaker match. First time ever, hopefully the only time, but not for the reasons a lot of people had putting out there that apparently have pissed off a lot of the veterans in the WWE. And I understand. I honestly truly do, and I'm not just saying that for the sake of saying it. I understand, and again, I'll get to this when I get there, but the veterans, when they're they are defending what took place, and in the name of Goldberg and The Undertaker, they seem to, at least the two that I came across, they seem to have left out a huge point, a huge part of that, which I think was more of the reason and problem why we ended up having what we're having. So, let's just get into it. And apparently they added a tag team match, but it was for the pre-show. I missed the pre-show, but it was the Usos taking on the Revival, and the Usos went over. I didn't even bother checking the replays later on because the show itself was just not that good in general. But we opened up, surprisingly, with Seth Rollins defending against Baron Corbin for the Universal title. Rollins sporting here his Avengers Endgame time travel suit, which looked pretty cool. And not much to the match. Of course, everybody was wondering and what's going to happen when and if Lesnar, which he was yelling, screaming earlier on last week, Friday, to cash in the Money in the Bank. And he waited until the very end where Rollins was distracted after he won and retained the title. Lesnar's music hits, and from behind came Baron Corbin, once again laying him out, similar to the previous Monday night, where he laid him out just for Lesnar to beat the crap out of him. But this time, bit of a twist. So Lesnar comes down. Here comes Heyman. Rollins is laid out, and as Lesnar steps into the ring, Heyman is the one carrying the briefcase. He trips, quote unquote, getting into the ring between the ropes, and the briefcase falls and bounces around in the ring. Lesnar looks confused. Rollins looks like, what the hell was that? So as Lesnar goes to pick up the briefcase, Rollins takes advantage and just does a number on Lesnar, taking a steel chair and nailing the railroad spikes, denting and bruising not only the chair, but Lesnar's elbow, in fact. So, in short, no cash in. Even after Lesnar was hit with a curb stomp onto the briefcase itself, no cash in. There's going to be repercussions. There's going to be counter, blah, blah, blah. All that bullshit from Stephanie McMahon a couple of weeks ago. Nowhere to be found here. Not that she could have been on the show anyway, but these higher-ups, her other family members that were also there, didn't come out or say anything backstage as far as, well, He promised cashed in, somewhat constitute as an advertisement. It didn't happen, so blah, blah, blah. So they nipped us for 3 weeks, twice in one, about a potential cash in from Lesnar, and we all knew. At least most of us did. I knew. And that's I'm not saying that just to brag, but I'm like, come on, seriously? They're going to milk this. They are, not to mention Lesnar's limited dates. They probably used up a fraction of them this month alone. Well, half of May until June. Chances are we probably won't see a cash until maybe towards the end of the year, and that's being nice. And I seriously doubt he's going to hold it for a whole year when he just realized, kayfabe, that he had that much time to cash in. And that's the other thing. Why have that reaction? Well, screw you. I have a year to cash in. For all we know, Rollins won't even be the champion then. But yet for 2 weeks in a row after that, I'm going to cash in. Psych, no, I'm not. I'm going to pick a champion who to cash in. No, I'm not. Then that Stephanie promo. And then the Heyman promo. They're like, well, I'm being forced to cash in. Like, no, I'll do it Friday. I hope by now a lot of you that have been more pissed off than the longtime fans here are seeing the pattern and more or less getting an idea of how creative the WWE team is. Because it's not. If this is creative, I hate to see what intelligence looks like. I digress. Finn Balor in full demon mode, taking on Andrade, defending the Intercontinental Championship. Unfortunately, it's well, I have a little more detail later on, but it's unclear. Well, what I'm trying to get at, and I'm sure many of you have heard, Andrade, unfortunately, his mom passed away during the weekend while he was out. So it was unclear if he was already heading back or once his match was over or if it happened the day of or the next day. But understandably was not on TV this week. But my thoughts and prayers go out to his family. It's a real difficult time for him right now. And for anyone that's gone through that kind of loss, it's just heartbreaking to hear. But in the match at Super Showdown, Finn Balor, really cool, interesting entrance, by the way. So much reminiscing of his NXT days when I believe it was NXT TakeOver London. He was defending the NXT Championship, and he came up with the Jack the Ripper costume. And I'm sure he does this every time he's a champion, but it just reminisced of that so much. And halfway down the ramp, the physical belt was already there, and he just had to pick it up and continue on with his entrance. But here, Balor retained the title. I thought it was one of the okay matches compared to the ones that they had on Smackdown months ago. Feels like forever. Then it was Shane McMahon with Drew McIntyre in his corner versus Roman Reigns. Of course, with a lot of help from Drew McIntyre, Shane McMahon defeats Roman Reigns. So they have Shane on this winning streak. He bulldozed over The Miz for a couple of months on pay-per-views as well. Now, ever since starting this program with Roman Reigns, keeping Reigns far away from the championship. And with Shane going around with this moniker of his and his plastic trophy or whatever the hell thing's made of. And there are conversations, if you will. There are rumblings in the pro wrestling fan community. If this keeps up, I would not be surprised, and maybe some of you shouldn't be either, but maybe pissed off, but not as surprised if they go as far as booking Shane McMahon to win either the Universal or the WWE title. For a short run, that is. Probably he'll realize that since everyone's gunning for him, and if McIntyre is still his ally, and with Elias at the time, it's just going to be too much pressure, and he's going to vacate the title, and then we'll have probably another tournament or another one-night 8-man elimination tournament or whatever. That's just me fantasy booking. You know, it has to make sense because The Miz never even had a chance to overcome, especially after the whole getting his father involved, and never really got to avenge it. Not even at WrestleMania, all that ass whooping that Shane took, and he still won because Miz was overzealous with that superplex off the catwalk there, or whatever that's called, with the hard camera at MetLife Stadium, and the fall knocked out both men essentially. But Shane happened to land with his arm across the Miz's body, and the referee was there. Oh, well, this counts as a pinfall. Damn them being knocked out. 1, 2, 3. And kind of scary if you think about it. But moving along. Lars Sullivan making his, I guess, pay-per-view debut. Going 3-1 against the Lucha House Party. Started off okay. Each member of the House Party getting the offense in. Lars, with, of course, being the big man, would swat them away like flies. But at the end, it took the House Party to triple team Lars Sullivan, kicking him, beating him down. Referee had no choice but to call for the bell, as Sullivan won by disqualification. And as the House Party was leaving, they were thinking, hey, let's go back and beat him down some more. Here's when the Freak got upset and made a comeback and beat the crap out of the House Party. And he left them laying all over the place. Ringside, up the ramp, even higher up the ramp. Well, Sullivan is looking pretty strong here. Glad that no one really took the pin, because I still feel that they're still testing the waters with Sullivan as far as his performance in front of a large crowd like they had in Parts Unknown. And I understand. I get that he comes out every week, whether it's Raw or SmackDown, week to week. But it's one thing to come out, cut a promo, and then beat the crap out of someone, than to have an actual match, which is much longer, usually. And you got to sell, and you got to have these reactions, show emotion somewhat, even though a lot of people don't do that. And again, if in front of average 12, 15,000, maybe more people in a common arena in the States versus a stadium, which I don't think they ever announced its attendance. But it didn't matter because it was hot as hell. And that's something, speaking of numbers, that's something that they mentioned throughout the night, that as it was about maybe 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock local time, and us here at the East Coast had it at 2 p.m. start time. And the announcers were constantly mentioning how hot it was. 100 degrees, 110 degrees. It may not have been the actual temperature, but I could believe that that's what it felt like. When we get the, it's 89 degrees out for a high, but it's going to feel more like 97. You got to add humidity, you got to add moisture and all that stuff. This is, I'm not a meteorologist, but I watch the news every day. But that is just crazy. Thankfully, they didn't have it, the show that they didn't have it during the daytime. Because if it was 100 degrees at night, imagine with the scorching sun, and most cases this time of year on that side of the world, it's mildly cloudy at best. I'm not sure how often it rains, but I'm pretty sure when one of these deals they have out there, it will. And that stadium, if they're working there, doesn't have a roof. We shall see. But it's just crazy. And a lot of these guys were perspiring crazy. I mean, I have some notes about that later, but they were sweating there. Well, it was all guys, so every guy in there was sweating their balls off. And in the longest match of the night, nearly half an hour, for no reason whatsoever, Randy Orton defeated Triple H, which I thought was the right call. Triple H, not so much because Triple H is a part-timer and he works in the office or whatnot, and that Randy Orton is the young stud. I mean, Orton's been around since 2002, at least on the main roster. Triple H since 96. Neither guy is in a position where they have to go over because they're planning some kind of big push later on. No. They've been there and done that. Both men have more than a dozen championships under their belt. And they've been in the main event so many times they probably got to a point where I was like, yeah, it's too much of it, because it got boring after a while. It was always Orton Cena. Remember that time? And for a while, because they didn't have as many pay-per-views as they do now, but in the early 2000s, it was always Rock Triple H. And if Austin wasn't out of injury, it would have been Austin Triple H, Rock Austin, Austin Triple H. So a combination of the three, because they were the top guys back then. Foley, Undertaker, yeah, but for some reason they weren't going that direction. But that time they were already considered veterans. Taker came in 90, Foley came in 95, 96, I believe. But in comparison to Triple H, Foley's been not in the company, but in the business much longer. But I digress. And I was okay with this outcome because it made more sense. Triple H is just going to go back into the office, put the suit back on, and Owen's going to continue. Or there could have been some kind of double count out, nothing gets settled here, but that would have left doors open for them to have a rematch later down the road, which I'd rather not see, personally. In a match where I'm surprised no one didn't pass out or no one slipped off the other person's body because these guys sweated so much. Braun Strowman and Bobby Lashley. Strowman was like, he just came out of the sauna after 10 minutes. Even his beard was sweating. But pretty good. Power Man match here. Neither man really want to budge, although Strowman had the height advantage, obviously. But Lashley stood his ground and kept up with the big man. I wouldn't mind seeing these guys go at it again, hopefully in a more air-conditioned surroundings for them, because this was just unbelievable. You pay more attention to the sweat rather than the match itself towards the end. It was just so crazy and funny at the same time. Ziggler, as in Dolph Ziggler, challenged Kofi Kingston for the WWE Championship. Pretty good. Honestly, I expected maybe a little more. Honestly, I don't know what I was going to expect other than a pretty good match at the very least. And Kingston retains the title. Of course, there was a little bit, I wouldn't say help or distraction, but because Ziggler, had he not gone after Xavier Woods on the outside, probably would have been a different outcome. I'm trying to keep this as kayfabe as possible in this one. But he brought it on himself. Woods provided a bit of distraction, and Kofi Kingston got the Trouble in Paradise and got the win. Oops. In a match that I thought for some reason was going to be off the card, as they weren't mentioning it during the Smackdown Go Home show early in the week, but I was wrong. So instead of a 50-man Battle Royal, we ended up getting 51-man Battle Royal. Someone at WrestleZone did a head count. And I had the list here, but I figured that's just going to take up way too much time. But apparently they counted it a couple of times and still came up with 51. So someone snuck in there. I don't know if it mattered or the fact that it's still going to be the largest Battle Royal they ever had at any time during its history in the WWE, but it was chaotic. It looked You ever seen a whole herd of puppies in a box, and all of them are just trying to, they're all bouncing up and down. All you see are the heads bouncing up and down because they want you to pick them up. That's what it looked like here to me. A bunch of puppies not trying to get out the ring, but trying to throw other puppies out of the ring so they can have the whole box to themselves. And a lot of familiar faces here. Shinsuke Nakamura, who we haven't seen probably, I'll say a couple of months. It was ridiculous. If you go back, maybe it's just me, but if you go back when the whole group of wrestlers were coming down the rampway, Shinsuke is walking down the middle of the ramp. He looked like as if he was trying to hide his identity, like he didn't want to be seen or even notice that he was in the Battle Royal. I mean, it's for a payday, I guess. Who's to argue or complain about anyone else not wanting to get a paycheck out of this. I mean, they're offering millions of dollars to have these shows on an annual basis, 2 a year. Matter of fact, they got 8 years left. But it just really sucks. Guys like Shinsuke and Rusev, for a while, and I was giving the WWE a benefit of the doubt about the wild card thing, which is at this point just complete bullshit. And as if they were trying to do what they did back when Wrestling Challenge was around and Superstars of Wrestling, well, just Superstars, since they were sued for using Superstars of Wrestling. Not every week did you see the big names, and in between you see other names, mid-carders. But point being that they were all TV tapings in 1 week, and it was spread out, kind of like what they do with NXT now. They'll tape 2 shows in one night, and it'll spread out for about a month or so on TV, or on this case, the WWE Network. And everyone got a chance to shine. Not so much the champions and the mid-carders and higher up, but everyone got a chance to shine. But for the past month or so here, it seems like almost everybody disappeared. If they're not out on injury, like I mentioned, Shinsuke's been out, off TV anyway. Rusev's been off TV, among others. And they're just focusing on the mid-higher guys and the champions. And they're still considering calling up a few other NXT guys and signing other people here and there. What's the point if they're not going to get little to no TV time, or they just disappear in the back somewhere, but still getting paid? I guess if I was in that position as well, why should I complain? I'm still getting paid. So if that's your attitude and mentality, then you were never meant to be a wrestler at all, much less even a fan. So screw you. So we get to a main event of the Goldberg and Undertaker match. Their entrance alone, combined, was 10 minutes. Taker's was obviously much longer, but I found it to be very cool. But of course, Goldberg, being Goldberg, had to headbutt. We didn't see it, but we saw the result that he headbutts the door to his locker room and gets escorted to the ring by security. He's already bleeding, not by much, just a little, as if he just popped a zit or something, bleeding. The match started off great. Both men were face to face. Goldberg does the cut your throat or slit your throat gesture, which for some reason I thought was like a gesture that's banned in that part of the world, but I guess I was wrong. So Taker gives a shot to Goldberg. Goldberg backs off, bounces off the ropes, and delivers a spear. Sets up Taker again, delivers a second spear. And we're all thinking, oh no, this is Survivor Series 2016 all over again. But Taker kicks out and does his old sit-up. And the match continues. And the pace was okay for what it was. And then came Goldberg shooting the Undertaker into the turnbuckles in the corner. And then charging, which I believe was supposed to be a shoulder tackle or shoulder block into the corner. Taker moves, and Goldberg hits the ring post. Well, to be more precise, it wasn't the ring post itself. It had to have been where the bolts that connect to the turnbuckle itself, that little rod, and it's welded into the ring post itself. There are these giant screws, screw heads, lug nuts, whatever you want to call them, that hold up or support the rod that connects to the turnbuckle. And on the other end, as mentioned, it's welded into the steel post. Usually it's covered by a foam padded cover that wraps around. When I look back, I didn't really notice it there. I'm not saying it was gone or missing. I just didn't notice it. But Goldberg did not hit the post itself. It was that area, as I mentioned, where all the nuts and bolts are. And he busted himself wide open. Bleeding, not as bad as Dustin Reynolds was at Double or Nothing, but bad enough. Referee put the gloves on. Match continues. So if Goldberg wasn't knocked silly, or at the very least concussed, fast forward about a few minutes and Taker goes for the tombstone and drops Goldberg on his head. We're not talking Owen Hart, Steve Austin, SummerSlam 97, but somehow, and again, going back to how ridiculously hot it was, both men were sweating profusely. Maybe Taker didn't lose his grip. It didn't seem like he lost his grip, but I'm assuming here that Goldberg's body, because he's all sweated up, upside down, slid more than he had to with the momentum of Undertaker dropping to his knees. And he slipped a good half an inch or so. And if you go back, and you notice they never replayed it, but if you go back, you see clearly Goldberg spiking or being spiked to the canvas. So between headbutting the post, let's just call it the post, getting dropped on your head while bleeding, yeah, dude, you got to be concussed. Match continues. Goldberg tries to go for the jackhammer. And this is where everybody thought like, oh, and what everybody's saying, these guys were too old, too slow, too this and that. Leaving out the fact, which is funny, the fans, at least that were vocal about this, left out a huge portion of what happened during the match that might have led to why things were botched in the last minute or so. And the veterans did the same thing, which I'll get to in a minute, but both sides left out that huge portion, that huge bit of fact that there's a guy in the match who had his bell rung, bleeding, got dropped on his head, tried his very best, as strong as the man is at his age of, 51 years old at this point, tried to get a 7-foot, 300-pound man over his head into a suplex position and try to spin him around to deliver a power slam type maneuver, combine that to get the jackhammer. I'll give him credit for trying, but unfortunately Goldberg did not have the strength and at the very best delivered a brainbuster. Commentators tried their best to cover it up, but no, it was horrible, guys. That was not what it was intended to be. Just call it for what it is. He didn't deliver properly, and then Taker gets dropped on his head. So I believe this. As soon as it happened, as soon as we, at least I saw this, Taker communicates with Goldberg, calls an audible, and it's like, we're going home. We are going home. Delivered a half of a choke slam. Taker goes for the pin, gets the 3 count, and wins. For some reason, I don't know why they always do this. And Taker's done this a lot. It could have helped maybe ease the blow a little bit as far as the feedback. But I get that they wanted to avoid showing Goldberg being attended to because Goldberg's superhuman. People like that don't need medical assistance. But at this point, who cares? We saw the reasons why he would need assistance in the first place. The man got dropped on his head. Hell, Taker got dropped on his head. But they got that close-up shot of the Undertaker shaking his head. That, yeah, match was, it became, the entire match was not. It became horrible. The match, unfortunately, was not as, didn't go as well, I'm sure, as many planned out for it to be. There was a Twitter video posted a couple of days later showing Goldberg leaving the ring and immediately collapsing. No, all this week, all this time has gone by with no detailed updates as to what exactly happened after the match. Was it another heat exhaust or heat stroke or what happened? Blood loss, concussed, who knows? God forbid it's a combination of all the above. at the very least, and honestly, Goldberg didn't have to do this. For as many people that were, especially Matt Riddle, which I'll get into, Goldberg took to social media and said that he felt that he let the fans down, and he revealed that he did knock himself out during a match, so that must have been the headbutt with the ring post, and was not able to finish. And Goldberg went hard, getting wounded when he got busted open. So many believe, going by that tweet from Goldberg, seems to feel that he let those down that came to watch. Well, we got what was advertised: Goldberg versus The Undertaker, first time ever. We weren't expecting anyone to go to Concussion City or Bust Your Head Open City. But he did end the tweet, Goldberg did, that he hopes that everyone was still happy. I guess he was trying to mention that the sight of Goldberg and Undertaker, the visual of Taker versus Goldberg. And I mentioned this before a long time ago, even if this is any indication, which I doubt, but it will be under different circumstances due to injury. But if we ended up getting Sting versus Taker, and yes, WWE doctors will not clear him, but Sting's doctors have cleared him, so debate that all you want. Maybe things work differently out in parts unknown, and Sting would have gotten an automatic clearance to have maybe a 5-10 minute match with The Undertaker. But the point being here is the visual, that face-to-face when the bell rang. As a fan, especially growing up during the Monday Night Wars, it's like, holy crap, imagine this happened 20, 25 years ago. Thankfully, even though there was some references made, but it wasn't treated like it was WCW versus WWE again. I think they learned that lesson after Sting and Triple H. And when you have Sting come on live TV and say, well, it's ridiculous at this point to defend WCW when they've been dead for so many years at that point. So Matt Riddle, he was very vocal during Super Showdown and especially during the Undertaker-Goldberg match, saying, Goldberg, you lived up to the hype yet again. You are absolutely the worst wrestler in the business, bro. That's not an opinion, that's a fact. I don't know if Riddle was keeping in mind the injury here or that he noticed being dropped on his head, Goldberg that is. But it's not the first time Riddle has been open about his feelings towards Goldberg. But Riddle has his reasons. Said that his passion for pro wrestling is so strong that he gets very upset when people are unsafe, dangerous, and a liability to the company. At that point, when Riddle made those comments, a lot of fans were wondering, Riddle, why do you hate Goldberg so much? And I understand his point of view. For a long time, Goldberg, especially in WCW, was looked at as very stiff in the ring with his kicks and his punches. Of course, we all remember the super kick that ended Bret Hart's career. A lot of people even made memes, created memes of Goldberg being dropped on his head and a side-by-side comparison when Goldberg kicked Bret Hart in the head as karma. Well, if you believe in karma, in this case, I guess karma was late to the party. But it's just unfortunate. And Goldberg was already in retirement. He's already a Hall of Famer. This was just a attraction match, if you will, versus The Undertaker. John Cena even chimed in a little bit, speaking to TMZ Sports, who was not there. He has a bunch of other things going on, including being the host of Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? I believe they're going to start airing those on Nickelodeon. And he was asked about what happened, Undertaker and Goldberg, saying, I think it's, let me try that again. I think an individual's career is up to that individual. I think that's pretty much the way I can describe that. I've been having the same conversations with myself, and I'm only 42, but it's something we've got to address each day. It's individually specific, and when those people are ready to stop, they'll stop. He was asked about should've, would've, could've, would've, should've, whatever. In regards to Goldberg and Taker calling it quits for good. And he's right. If you can still go, you can still go. It's not a guarantee that you'll be the world champion within the year or so, but it's what you do. It's what you've created and trained your body for. Cena's mentioned he's 42. I think AJ Styles is 41, 42 as well. And he has great matches. A lot of guys are in their mid to late 30s and still going. But it's up to that individual. I'm sure Vince forced some guys into retirement because we just have nothing for you, pal. Or unfortunately, due to injury, forced into retirement regardless. But there's just a lot of debate here, and I'll try to wrap this up as far as the Goldberg-Undertaker match here. But veterans such as JBL and Mark Henry chimed in. JBL said, among other things, but sometimes matches don't go well. I saw fans blaming age and ego for these guys competing. I know both, not Goldberg as well, and both don't need the money. They do this because they love it. Love being in front of a crowd and love entertaining. Don't we want those we watch to love what they do? That's JBL. Again, he said a lot more, but this part of his statement is what stood out as far as countering the fans' reaction and comments that they've been making. But here, no mention that there was an injury that possibly could have led to the downfall of the match. But over at Busted Open Radio, Mark Henry chimed in, saying Goldberg deserves the respect that he's earned. The guy went in, busted his face open. How about saying thank you for not tapping out? They went through it for you. The Twitter fingers, the people that probably can't run a mile under a day, the people that can't lift on their own body weight, do one pull-up, people that don't have any belief in nothing beyond their own nose. Those are the people that came on social media and berated The Undertaker and Goldberg when it's a travesty to the wrestling business because they deserve better than that. And anybody that sent a tweet like that, you should be ashamed of yourself. Now, those are Mark Henry's words. Obviously very close with The Undertaker. Knows Goldberg pretty well. I'm not aware how close they are. And at least he mentions, but just before the match, how when Goldberg did his ritual, headbutting the door and goes out. And yeah, along the lines of what I was saying, that, you know, the man was concussed and continued the match regardless, and it was Taker who called the audible and go home early, if that was the case. Maybe one day we'll find out. And yeah, I'll give Goldberg credit for trying, although it would have been ill-advised for the jackhammer spot. And I get Mark Henry's point of view more so than JBL's to be on the defense for this with his colleagues, if you will. And again, it is completely understandable. Maybe not all of us that's been chiming in will never know how it is to be in the ring. I mean, I've had my cup of coffee, but, you know, nothing compared to what these guys have gone through for years and decades. And for all we know, these are just fans, and I'm being nice here, that are just recent fans or been around for a little bit and just go with what they see and leaving out a lot of details. And I get that happens sometimes, but at the same time, at least personally with my capabilities, if I'm wrong, I'll come out and say I'm wrong. I have a platform to do so. If I say something here today which I'm either misinformed, misunderstood, or say something inappropriate, I will come on the next time and apologize for it and correct myself. The majority of these people who say what they said about Goldberg and Undertaker being too old, or it's an ego trip or whatnot, would they ever put out a redacted statement or an apology note? No, of course not. Then who has the ego? If you want to chime in yourself, then I suggest go rent a studio or create one yourself at home, wherever, and put your voice out there and give us your opinion. Monday Night Raw this week dropped from a 2.19 to a 2.12. This was against the NBA Finals Game 5. But a still pretty strong number considering that this was post Super Showdown. And weren't too many follow-ups. And a lot of people pointed this out like what the hell? Unless everybody was jet lagged or not everybody came into work. Why the lack of follow-up on Raw? Well, they flew into San Jose, starting off with Universal Champion Seth Rollins, feeling proud for what he did to Brock, beating him to a pulp last Friday with the steel chair. Somehow brought this very same chair that he committed the act with. Just curious how he got that through customs. If this was all legit and Rollins assaulted Lesnar on foreign soil with a steel chair, I don't think you'll be able to bring back chair through customs and an international airport. But he brought it. He showed it off, how dented the steel chair was. But he gets interrupted by Baron Corbin. Says that the referee in their match was incompetent because, well, he left out a big portion. He kept getting in the referee's face after each 2 count, thinking that the referee was too slow or too fast. And at the end, the referee just shoves him back, and Rollins rolled him up, Baron Corbin that is, and that's how he retained the title. So he gets a rematch. No more automatic rematches. Yeah. He gets a rematch for Stomping Grounds next week, and that he would have a referee of his choosing. Corbin apparently spoke to executives earlier that day and fulfilled this wish. Of course, we don't know the executive he was speaking of is Shane McMahon, but it was never confirmed here. No authority figures, but Shane McMahon is pulling strings. No rematches, but everyone's getting one. So I guess unless the champion is challenged by the previous opponent or challenger, he accepts because he's a fighting champion. Well, there's your loophole right there. Sami Zayn comes out, and Seth Rollins, thinking that Zayn had an agenda with Corbin, was asking who would defend Zayn if he came down the rampway and started something with Seth Rollins. This brings out Kevin Owens, leading to Owens challenging Rollins for the main event, non-title, of course. A lot of wild cards already. So in the opening match, 15 minutes into the show, we see Lars Sullivan having his rematch versus the Lucha House Party. But this time it was under elimination rules, as Sullivan jumped the House Party before the bell rang. Kalisto was the first to be eliminated, followed by Lince Dorado. But then decides to toy around with Gran Metalik. Steps outside the ring and press slams Kalisto onto the top of the ring steps and does another false pin to Metalik back in the ring and focuses on Dorado and throws him headfirst into the ring post. And then finally does his diving headbutt off the top rope to pin and win over Gran Metalik. Carmella and R-Truth are seen entering the arena and is already chased by members of the WWE locker room, but no one has a referee, so this gave Truth a chance to call for an elevator and hops in along with a handful of the roster, and the elevator gets stuck. And there's a nice placed surveillance camera with a microphone inside the elevator that's stuck and no one sees them. You know, for power to be gone, it's amazing how that camera worked and the light's still on the inside. Usually they'll have emergency lights turn on inside of the elevator, but it was pretty bright in there. But we'll check back on them later on. Becky Lynch and Lacey Evans had a face-to-face interview, though via split screen. Nothing major here, just going back and forth with insults and gripes and whatnot as they have a rematch for the Raw Women's title at Stomping Grounds. Alexa Bliss once again brainwashing Nikki Cross, manipulating that Bayley, especially being in her hometown, made Alexa feel unwanted and unwelcome. And hoping to avoid that, Alexa Bliss asked for Nikki Cross to be in her corner during her tag team match later on. It's a little, I kind of see what they're doing with Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross here. It's interesting because we all know eventually, just like everyone else that Alexa Bliss has teamed up with or had to do her bidding, we all know what's going to happen. But because I think it's Nikki Cross being a little bit different and what Nikki character is, hopefully be a better payoff than what we saw with Nia Jax at the very least. Miz TV with special guest U.S. champion Samoa Joe. Miz points out that Joe's tactics to get back the U.S. title is unprofessional and a very low point. Samoa Joe responds like, well, maybe I should start talking smack about you and your family, Miz. Just to spice things up a bit. So Miz stands up. Of course, he's already in wrestling gear. Gets in Joe's face. Bit of a stare down, but all of a sudden we get Braun Strowman head into the ring and is looking to challenge Joe for the title. These two go face to face, but then Bobby Lashley claims that he wants a shot at the title. Then followed by Ricochet, who wants to continue his momentum, as he said, after defeating Cesaro twice on Raw, that he deserves a shot against Samoa Joe. This brings out Cesaro, but he doesn't really cut a promo. He just sucker punches Ricochet on the rampway, and all six men get into a brawl. And guess what? We get a six-man tag team match after the commercial. In the end, The Miz counters the neutralizer from Cesaro into a skull-crushing finale, tags in Ricochet, and hits the 630 as the baby faces win the match. Raw Women's Champion Becky Lynch teams up with Hometown Girl and Smackdown Women's Champion Bayley as they take on their respective challengers for Stomping Grounds, being Lacey Evans and Alexa Bliss. And it was during this match that I'm convinced that even though Alexa Bliss might have been medically cleared but never confirmed, but not taking too many big bumps, at least in the first half of the match. She didn't take a suplex attempt. She avoided an exploder. And conveniently, I might add. But towards the end, Bayley performed a sunset flip into a powerbomb against the turnbuckles on Alexa Bliss, hitting the back of her head and got a near pinfall. But there was a blind tag, and Lacey Evans comes in and delivers the women's right to Becky Lynch, who was on the outside of the ring, and then one to Bayley inside of the ring. And Bayley gets pinned by Lacey Evans in her own hometown. Bummer. Paul Heyman somehow teleports into the ring and tells the world that we are not going to find out when Lesnar will cash in. Convenient. He's not even going to insinuate anything of where Brock Lesnar will show up, or even if he will, that he'll have a referee with him whenever he decides to cash in, or that he'll even be the referee for Baron Corbin's choosing against his rematch, or for his rematch against Seth Rollins at Stomping Grounds. But guarantees that Lesnar will once again be the Universal Champion. We find out that in tonight's main event, Sami Zayn will be the outside special guest referee, so I guess that's the flavor of the month, having special guest referees all over the place, as he was appointed by Shane McMahon himself. We check back into the stall elevator with the 24/7 champion R-Truth, alongside Drake Maverick, Heath Slater, EC3, and Cedric Alexander, and of course Carmella. Not sure if any of this was actually a live feed from the elevator, but EC3 just couldn't stop laughing, so I'm going to assume that a lot of this segment was off script or improvised on the spot. Finally, someone revealed that, oh yeah, how about a cell phone, but they got no bars, just to make everyone else start laughing. And Carmella also chimed in and laughing when R-Truth, it's the way R-Truth said it, but I got no bars. And like there's no signal no more inside of elevators. Women's Tag Team Champions, the Iconics, mentioned that they are the longest reigning Women's Tag Team Champions. Of course they are. They never freaking defend them. At the very least, they'll be in singles matches, but even then, how do you defend a tag team title in a singles match? I hope I just did not give them an idea. But they just defeated two local talents here, make it real short work, and they pick up the win. We get ready for Shane McMahon's celebration over Roman Reigns last Friday in the ring. There's a party table set up. There's champagne. There's balloons, banners, all over the place. Halfway through, the crowd starts chanting boring, which it really was. It's just a waste of time here. He invites the Revival into the ring. I don't understand why they continue to describe some of these championships or these championship belts as gold, where clearly there's no trace of gold on them whatsoever, except maybe some traces here and there on the women's titles and the Universal and WWE title. Of course, some shades of gold on the women's tag team titles, but the men's tag team titles themselves, there's no gold on them whatsoever. It's silver, it's platinum, whatever. I'm not sure what it's really made out of, but it's not gold. But anyway, here Shane McMahon is wishing the Revival luck in their triple threat match that was originally a straight up tag team match between the Revival and Raw Tag Team Champions Kurt Hawkins and Zack Ryder, but the Usos were added in for a triple threat over the weekend. At the end, it came down to the Usos versus the Tag Team Champions. The Revival were outside of the ring. Jey Uso was setting up for the Superfly splash, I guess, if you call it, the body splash off the top rope. And just as his feet left the turnbuckle, Scott Dawson made a blind tag. Uso makes the splash, bounces off of Ryder. But here comes Dawson to toss him out of the ring, takes full advantage as Wilder takes care of Jimmy on the other side of the ring, steals a pin, and the Revival are the new Raw Tag Team Champions. So they might have signed that extended extra bonus contract after all. Well, we don't know. But the Revival are once again Raw Tag Team Champions, possibly an indication of what's to come if Shane McMahon, at least on the Raw side of things, is building his staple. He just needs Drew McIntyre and Elias to, I guess, become SmackDown Tag Team Champions sometime down the road. Back in the stuck elevator, Drake Maverick has been receiving advice about marriage from everyone. I guess to pass the time. So finally the door opens. Truth gets assaulted by the wrestlers that were outside, gets rolled up by Cedric Alexander, but gets broken up by the other wrestlers standing around. There were at least 4 pinfall attempts on Truth, but there was a gap between everyone else and the elevator, and Carmella somehow was able to drag Truth back into the elevator, and they escaped. As the door was closing, EC3 was the closest one to the elevator, making no attempt to try to stop it, as if there was an invisible force field preventing him from getting any closer. Latest episode of the Firefly Funhouse has Bray Wyatt asking Fate to whether or not to have The Fiend make an appearance, as Rambling Rabbit again becomes a victim when Bray Wyatt uses a giant sledgehammer to squish Mr. Rabbit and makes his it wasn't as graphic as I'm making it sound, but basically took whatever was left of Rambling Rabbit and turned it into a sauce. I think he bled orange, and it's now probably a steak sauce somewhere on the shelves of Walmart. But yeah, it continues to be more. This is the only interesting portion of Raw, and I believe they know this now, that they're having these segments of the Firefly Funhouse much later on in the show now. So pretty slick, pretty cool though. I'm more besides what else is to come for the Funhouse. I'm more curious to know when exactly Bray Wyatt's going to make his in-ring return as the Fiend. So we finally get to the main event as Seth Rollins takes on Kevin Owens in a non-title match with Sami Zayn as the outside official. Several times, Sami Zayn would not interfere but point out to the in-ring referee, John Cone, that he's making terrible choices, doesn't know how to count. Even at one point, pulling out the referee after Rollins hit the curb stomp and was trying to get the 3 count. So they trade places, the referees do, and the regular referee can't call for a DQ for another referee pulling him out. I mean, in the past they did, but they just switched. They just trade places in the ring. Rollins, feeling frustrated, grabs Sami Zayn by the shirt, and Zayn immediately calls for the bell, causing a DQ. And yeah, by the way, they forgot to dim the lights during the third hour of Raw, so to make it more edgy or raunchy or whatever the hell the excuse was. They didn't do that this week, or last week for that matter. After the bell, Rollins would attack Sami Zayn, only to be attacked from behind himself by Baron Corbin, who ran down to the ring and gets busted open on his left eye, Seth Rollins was. Corbin tried to attack Rollins with a steel chair, but gets kicked in the gut and retreats. Rollins would use the same chair on Sami Zayn instead, as Rollins goes berserk with the chair, hammering the railroad spikes once again, only on poor Sami Zayn, ending it with a curb stomp for good measure. And that was your Monday Night Raw review as we head into Smackdown, where The Miz opened up, hosting a Miz TV against his wishes, against his own will, mainly because of who his guests are, being Shane McMahon, Drew McIntyre, and Elias. So The Miz mentions to McIntyre that one day Shane will betray him, and the Shane brushes him aside and segues into setting up a match that if The Miz wants to get to Shane again, you have to beat both McIntyre and Elias in separate matches, which we start right away. Miz easily defeats Elias with a skull-crushing finale as Elias missed the elbow drop from the top rope. Then it was McIntyre's turn, so after being distracted from Shane McMahon on the outside, McIntyre delivers a Claymore kick and wins. But Shane still offers a match against The Miz anyway in his weakened and beaten state. The Miz did try to make a comeback, but it wasn't enough as Shane slapped on the triangle submission hold and The Miz tapped out. So some immediately jumped to the conclusion that, yeah, The Miz was buried. Once again, not getting any payback or vengeance, payback, if you will, at all against Shane McMahon this entire year so far. So creative. Ember Moon was seen backstage what I believe was playing a Nintendo Switch. Not too sure because I don't have one. As she is paid a visit by Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose, who walk over. They knock out the Nintendo Switch or Game Boy out of her hand and instead hand over the Muscle and Fitness magazine that Mandy Rose is on the cover on for her to read instead. Mandy is so upset, probably because she just broke an expensive game console on the floor, would throw away into the trash, leaving Ember Moon very pissed off. SmackDown Tag Team Champions Daniel Bryan and Rowan hit into the ring and wanted a Unification Tag Team Championship match with the Yolo County Tag Team Champions of Dave Doudrah and AJ Kershaw from AEW. Before the match even starts, Heavy Machinery make their way to the ring and challenge for the SmackDown Tag Team Championships, but instead are involved with the Yolo County Tag Team Championships and squash the now former champions. And Heavy Machinery are your new Yolo County Tag Team Champions. They never had a chance. And by the way, the SmackDown Tag Team Champions would run off before the match even ended. Once again, Carmella and R-Truth, who are getting a lot of TV time ever since the 24/7 title was a thing. Carmella was getting ready for her match, and R-Truth then hides into one of those giant moving crates and seems to lock himself inside, concerning that someone was nearby at the moment and was going to jump in from behind for the 24/7 title. So now Truth is stuck in there, kayfabe, and Carmella couldn't find a key or anything to open it. And had to run off towards the match because an agent from behind came over and said, "Hey, your match is up now." So in the background, we see Jinder Mahal, and he witnessed all this. And I guess in his best attempt, in his high-pitched voice, pretended to be Carmella and told Truth not to worry as he or she were trying to find a crowbar or something to pry the crate open and let R-Truth out. And we will find out later on that Truth himself was still in the crate and it was being delivered to San Diego, which is not a short trip from Sacramento where they were for Smackdown this week. And more than likely, they'll be going to open up the box and find a dehydrated, lack of oxygen R-Truth by the time he arrives to San Diego. So no title change here, no being chased by half the roster this time on SmackDown. Well, it didn't matter because in the match, Carmella had to take on Sonya Deville, which didn't last too long as Mandy Rose provided distraction here. Deville would run to Carmella, delivering a running high knee to the jaw and gets the pin for the win. And no Ember Moon, which makes absolutely no sense. You break her Game Boy, Nintendo Switch or whatever. Here's an opportunity to get back at them during or after the match. And no Ember Moon runs to the ring. Logic. What's that? We get the return of all three members of the New Day back in the ring as Big E makes his return as they were set up for the main event versus Kevin Owens, Dolph Ziggler, and Sami Zayn. They got a promo here about the return of Big E and how good it feels to be reunited. Ziggler interrupts to announce to the world that he will take on Kofi Kingston in the rematch, this time in a steel cage at Stomping Grounds. And Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, who apparently put aside their quest for the Universal title aside, appeared here next to Ziggler to right the wrongs, and that they will get an opportunity to do so during their six-man tag team match later on. Aleister Black, I thought this was pretty funny, but Aleister Black, the past few weeks has been seen in a dark room with a bit of a light off to the side. He kicks down the door to whichever dark room he was in and screams for someone to pick a fight with him, giving the impression that he's getting very pissed off that he hasn't been in a fight, and rightfully so. He hasn't had a match in months, at least not on TV. SmackDown Women's Champion Bayley taking on Nikki Cross in a non-title match as Bayley wins after delivering a flying elbow drop. And all this time, after Alexa Bliss accused Bayley of liking negative comments on social media about Nikki Cross. Of course, Bayley's rebuttal was, look at the source, meaning Alexa Bliss. Look at the source of where the story's coming from. And what's funny, Bayley never even mentioned whether or not she really did like or did not like these comments at all. Good way to cover your ass, I guess. Bayley was basically saying about Alexa, she's a liar. But I did like those comments, though. Apollo Crews is interviewed discussing what didn't happen during his match last week against Andrade and Zelina Vega, who provided distraction. All of a sudden, the camera pans to the side, and we see Chad Gable in a new haircut writing down notes very nonchalantly and almost, to me anyway, almost creepy-like. He was standing there the whole time listening and watching Apollo Crews, and he's taking notes for reasons. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to follow and or watch 205 Live this week, nor Main Event and NXT. Just had a lot of things going on, so no review on those shows this week. But I've read somewhere that Chad Gable did re-debut, so to speak, on the roster of 205 Live, as that's his new home rather than SmackDown. And that had a pretty good match there. But see where this is going to go, because technically speaking, SmackDown is 205 Live. They just have to wait 2 hours later to have the Cruiserweights do their thing in the ring, and hopefully not half the arena is empty by that time. So in the 6-man tag team match main event, which is very good, by the way, a very entertaining match, but in the end, it was Kingston hitting a Trouble in Paradise to both Sami Zayn and Dolph Ziggler to get the pin and win. So this SmackDown is in the history books. And this week, if you noticed, no Roman Reigns. I just thought I should point that out because the wild card rule, many believe, is essentially a Roman Reigns rule where you can jump from SmackDown and Raw for really no reason, just to continue one feud. And it's very disappointing where there could have been multiple feuds going on at once involving the same characters, if you will. But they missed the ball. Hell, they dropped it and probably hit their toes on the way down. And it was just, this creative team just sucks. Moving on. Ric Flair was on Busted Open Radio this week, where he discussed his updated health condition, saying that he was having difficulty breathing before the operation and couldn't walk more than 10 steps without feeling any kind of pain. The surgery was originally scheduled for a Friday, but due to blood clots, it was rescheduled for the following Monday. And additionally, he was suffering from fluid in the heart. So this man must have been in tremendous pain. Unbelievable. But God bless him. He fought it through and had successful surgery, obviously. And it's still going. Woo! And speaking of Flair, Melinda Morris Zanoni and Legacy Talent and Entertainment have filed a civil lawsuit against Ric Flair for the remarks he made in a recent YouTube video that's been since deleted that alleged the company of embezzling money out of Ric Flair. Melinda Morris is Ric Flair's former CEO and manager of Legacy Talent, as Flair accused them of stealing money in the video that's, again, since been deleted or removed. Melinda also go on to say that she put trademarks he owned in jeopardy. And Flair said he had legal proof of these accusations against them. Legacy Talent and Entertainment put out a statement saying that we have taken the first step and filed a civil lawsuit against Richard M. Fleer, a.k.a. Ric Flair, and certain unnamed, for now, defendants for defamation per se, and look forward to providing the falsity of every wrongful allegations contained in this video that was posted on YouTube on June 3rd, 2019. Ric Flair having taken down the video is not enough. We will vigorously use the court system to protect our good names and reputation and obtain damages due to Ric Flair's comments in the video. And we intend to amend the lawsuit to include all involved parties and hold all involved accountable. We completely stand behind our client's well-known reputation and truthfulness, professionalism, honor, and integrity. Well, this is interesting because back in 2017, Flair had previously sued Melinda after accusing her of stealing about $46,000 from him, including money that was tied with the ESPN 30 for 30 special. Flair had been represented by Melinda and Legacy Talent between 2009 and 2017. Flair also said he regretted sending colleagues to said agency for representations such as Sting, Mick Foley, and Kurt Angle, just some of the people that he had to apologize to for sending them to a, quote, thief. I mentioned Matt Riddle earlier during his Goldberg comments, but apparently he still has some spark in him to want to compete back in MMA. He has records with UFC, Bellator, and Titan FC before he signed with WWE. Riddle was one of the top stars of NXT, but could return one day at the very least, according to what Fightful.com had to say, as Triple H would be willing to discuss Riddle's potential return to the MMA and have a career there. According to Sean Ross Sapp, he asked Triple H about this, and Triple H's response was, well, the question would be, if an offer came, would it be something he's interested in doing? Because he's having the time of his life doing what he's doing. He might, but I don't know if he would want to take a moment out and train differently. I'm sure many are probably wondering, well, Bobby Lashley did it. Brock Lesnar kind of did it, among others. I mean, what's the difference? Unless Riddle's involved with a very high-profile angle right now and he's going after a championship. I get it. You don't want to risk injuries from the MMA side of things, or even vice versa, and try to train for an MMA comeback, but you were injured in an NXT show. But I say, hey, and by the way, Riddle is yet to comment about this, but I say if the man wants to do it, let him do it. You're preventing him from having more income is what you're doing. And it could be balanced. I mean, it'll be probably physically exhausting after a while, training for both NXT and MMA. But why not? I mentioned earlier that there was a 51-man over-the-top rope battle royal at Super Showdown. I forgot to mention the winner. It was Mansoor. Mansoor, the hometown crowd hero, who had a tremendous ovation after he won. And afterwards, it was reported that Ali, who was also one of the participants, announced that he would be donating the money that he made from the event to charity, aiming to those who are in need from all around the world. He took to social media this week that Water, a nonprofit charity that aims to bring safe and clean drinking water to the people in need, while it's unknown just how much Ali will be donating, he joins the list of WWE superstars that have tried to donate or partner with charitable causes after making a visit to parts unknown for the event. What a great and noble gesture by Ali and the others to try to help those from around the world, really, who unfortunately are not able to. But it's just a small step to show that others do care for others from around the world, especially from countries they're not even from. So I give much respect and props to Ali and to others who have done the same gestures over time. So how about some behind-the-scenes stories from Super Showdown? Some of these stories actually came from those who were there working backstage. And one source, WrestleVotes, apparently had the opportunity to speak to a few employees from the WWE to see what they thought of the trip. And the feedback received was not all good. For example, one employee described it as a disaster. Another described it as a train wreck. On top of that, word going around from the Wrestling Observer and Dave Meltzer specifically is that most WWE superstars are against the trip, but simply do not speak up. Others have, such as Daniel Bryan, John Cena, and Kevin Owens, just to name a few. But others, if you think about it, if too many stand up and choose not to go, then there's no deal. Then at that point, who will be held accountable? You got to think about this. If half the roster says, I don't want to go for reasons, or I don't want to go because of personal reasons, but what kind of show will they have? If half the roster doesn't show up, there's going to be, what, a 2-hour, 5 or 6 match card? According to Dave Meltzer, most guys don't want to rock the boat. It was an awfully long trip, and one person told me if it was up to him, he would never go back. But it was not up to him, so it doesn't matter. In other words, just like, it sucked. It doesn't seem like these trips that WWE go to parts unknown are getting any better. regarding employee satisfaction and the show's overall success. It really sucks, and there's more from FIFO.com. Just a few notes here, basically simplified. Vince McMahon was backstage at the event and has been to every single show so far. The company and Vince see it as an opportunity to show both parties that they are serious about the deal. Goldberg's family being present at the event was part of his condition to wrestle for the show. Some of the wrestlers that spoke to FIFO were surprised that Taker and Goldberg and their match went as long as they did. The decision regarding not featuring women on the show was made very close to the start of the show. Which was another thing. That's the reason why Alexa Bliss and Natalya were flown out there as someone from the WWE side who thought it would be a good idea to have women on the show to wrestle. But that was always the case. That was always a rule, despite what Stephanie said earlier in the week, that she believes one day women will wrestle on one of these shows. Okay, I mean, it's great to have a hope and a dream like that, but you'd be going against a whole other country's laws and rules and regulations. I mean, it sucks to hear that. Like, women can't do certain things. I get that. Women here have freedoms that no one else, no other women from other countries could even dream of having. But in that part of the world, it's been like that for as long as I can remember. And you think they're going to change this for one wrestling show? If it happens, and it's a real long shot in the dark, I'm pretty sure it'll give the women there, who live there, some hope. Well, if they allow this for an outside company to do it here, why can't we? Like, oh, but they're letting women drive now, so that's a step in the right direction. Well, if it is, it's a very slow step. But who am I to argue what one country's establishment, as far as what they've built to this point, what they want to see how or feel they should run their country under governments or a prince or whomever. I think those rules suck personally, but that's their rules. No different than who you go visit at home and say, hey, take off your shoes. Or, hey, make sure you sit on the plastic. I mean, if I was visiting your home, I'm sure you'll appreciate me following your rules. So, with no more details to how exactly this conversation went to not have the women on the card at all at Super Showdown, fine, but they should have known better. They knew this going in the past 2 or 3 previous shows that no women allowed. Well, maybe not including the one in Australia because it was called also Super Showdown. But last year, they had one, their first one, the Greatest Royal Rumble. It was explained even then. And then when they went back for that bullshit World Cup tournament, same thing. If they got flack for showing that promo card for the, upcoming Money in the Bank pay-per-view last year, and they had the women wrestling in their gear, showing a lot of skin and whatnot, WWE received a lot of flack from the parts unknown government and never did it again, despite having a lot of positive commercials for them about what a great place to visit. If you're not a journalist, but to me, it just made no sense. When I read that last week, it's like, why are they even trying that? It's not going to happen. And sure enough, it didn't. My only question is, whoever made that final decision, why did you wait until the beginning of the show? Maybe that's why the Triple H Randy Orton match ran so long, because some of that match would have been donated, if you will, to the women's match if it went on. But we'll never know the exact details as to why the decision was waited for so long. And who the hell is, from the WWE side of things, whose idea was it to even try? Anyway, on a final note from Fightful, the conditions were so miserable due to the heat. They passed around hydration salt being passed around to the talent in order to avoid dehydration. It's a form of water. And judging by the name, you can pretty much have an idea what it tastes like. But I personally would have packed a huge order of Poland spring water or something from the States. But that's just me. Speaking of Meltzer, he reported also on The Observer, Vince McMahon, Triple H, Stephanie, and Kevin Dunn were not on Raw or SmackDown this week, as Vince had a corporate obligation that he had to attend, and Kevin Dunn apparently does not work on the show when Vince is not there. Triple H had 8 hours of NXT tapings he had to prepare for and had to go down to Florida, while Stephanie reportedly does not work on TV anymore, but shows up on occasions. Meltzer reported that Ed Kowalski took over the reins of Raw this week. And in addition, Dana Warrior had a, quote, hands-on approach with the Lacey Evans segments of Raw this week. More so on her promo, to be exact. So a lot of different hats were being worn this week. Still went on without a hitch, despite what the ratings say. But, it is what it is. Cedric Alexander revealed on Twitter that his Facebook account was deactivated and disabled for impersonation reasons. I found that completely laughable, even though said account has the little blue check mark. Of course, this is very confusing to how his account could be suspended for impersonating himself on Facebook. Facebook itself could have been unaware that the account was for the real Cedric Alexander, but it's since then been disabled for now. I would imagine it'll be up and running real soon. There was a commercial online. It won't be seen here on American soil, but a commercial online for the upcoming Japan tour for the WWE later on this month, Tokyo to be exact, where we see Triple H in his suit sitting on his throne that looked very similar to the one that Cody broke at Double or Nothing. And many people looked at this as this is Triple H's response. He's going to Japan with the WWE, the old stomping grounds of Cody Rhodes and the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega and so on. I didn't see it that way. I mean, maybe the smirk on Triple H's face that he's sitting on the same throne that Cody broke or whatnot, maybe. But that's a stretch. And to follow up, because one of the main events at said card on June 28th is an 8-man tag featuring Triple H as an honorary member of the club, teaming up with AJ Styles, Luke Gallows, and Carl Anderson versus Drew McIntyre, Samoa Joe, Baron Corbin, and Bobby Lashley. It's the club, not the Bullet Club. As far as I know, they don't own the logo of Bullet Club, but don't be surprised if they come out with something very similar like that. And they gave their blessing, so to speak, the click that is, during Raw 25 with the other club members there, minus AJ Styles, in the middle of the ring. But I don't see this personally. I don't see this as a response, and if it is, well, this is the closest one we're ever gonna get. Sasha Banks seems to be working on another WWE project in regards to the WWE 2K20 video game over in Orlando, Florida, and it's suggesting that this should, quote, tell you all you need to know, end quote, about Sasha's status with the WWE. This coming from Dave Meltzer as well. So everything seems to look okay. We're going to eventually get Sasha Banks in the ring real soon. My best guess would be that they're trying to wait and finish up the current storylines involving perhaps the women's champions, or figure out where exactly to fit Sasha, whether it's back on Raw or move over to SmackDown. Some more name changes to NXT talent. I mentioned some last week. Well, we got some more this week, as Garza Jr. will now be Angel Garza. H will now go by Jordan Miles. And Jonah Rock will now be known as Bronson Reed. Holy crap, that's a change if I've ever seen one. Why these names? Well, the most common response or answer would be those names were either never owned by WWE, never created by WWE, and they want to control said name in WWE. And unfortunately, to those hardcore independent fans, for example, ACH, well, he made a huge impact in the independent scenes, but his fans from there, well, no, I have to get used to calling him Jordan Miles. He's not H anymore. Batista gave more insight in creative during his short stint before and during WrestleMania 35 this year, speaking to Ryan Satin of Pro Wrestling Sheet, saying that the creative process I still don't get. It was a nightmare to me the last time I was there, which was 2014, and it seems like it's become worse. I feel like they don't have a clear vision, a long-term vision. Everything is week to week. It doesn't seem like they stick to the plan very much. Chris Jericho pointed out something to me that makes complete sense. He said that John Cena is the last guy who was going to be over like he was. And it's because the performers, now they're limited. Their hands are tied. They can't go to war like we used to. We used to go to war and beat the crap out of each other and earn the level of respect from people. And it was just like a different level of respect. It was a different level of getting over. We had more freedom. I'm going to assume Batista is referring to talent actually having suggestions and ideas of their own mixed into whatever the hell creative was having on the table at the time. My question is, why does it have to be this way now? And this leads to people being miserable and frustrated and contemplating leaving the company, not wanting to resign, not wanting to have an extension and whatnot. John Moxley had a huge podcast tour, if you will, detailing and sharing all of the nightmare stories he's had with creative and Vince McMahon. And at the end result is what we get on TV. Dean Ambrose getting a flu shot on his ass on live television. Yeah, real creative. NXT is setting up an 8-man tournament where the winner gets a title shot of their choosing. And no spoilers, but it's interesting to note that those involved have not yet been seen on TV. TMZ Sports spoke with Dana White in regards to Brock Lesnar again. White was asked about the possibility that the entire Cormier-Lesnar situation was a ploy and that Lesnar is still actually considering a fight in the UFC. He's done. He made his decision. I don't know where he is in that other world, but I know he is looking to do a new deal with Vince. I have always had a good relationship with Brock. When you decide or do not decide to fight, it's a mental decision. If you're not all in, then you should not fight. I think he made the right decision. Personally, I think he made so too. Somehow, WWE has a better deal for him money-wise to have even less dates than you would have with UFC. That's not including training and gearing up for an upcoming fight. But you ever notice when Brock is off television on any given week, these conversations, these news packages are brought up. If not with Dana White, then with Paul Heyman, but with someone involving a working relationship with Lesnar. I was like, oh, Lesnar wasn't on WWE TV this week? He's probably going back to UFC. Somebody quick, go out there and get the statement from Dana White. Jeez, guys, relax. If anything, you're the ones that are being worked more than the fans are. Jeez. In lighter side of the news, and actually a very uplifting news, the Squared Circle sisters have raised more than $80,000 for the late Ashley Mazzaro's daughter, Alexa. This comes after Mick Foley offered to attend watch parties with fans for $5,000 and the sale of his classic Wanted t-shirt that amazingly has raised more than $31,000 of it over at ProWrestlingTees.com. All that income went to Ashley Mazzaro's daughter educational fund on GoFundMe, which is the title if you feel like donating. That's exactly what it's called, Ashley Mazzaro's daughter educational fund. The goal is set at $100,000, and I think it's safe to say at this point, as far as her education goes, Alexa is going to be okay. Plus, being surrounded by so many loved ones, she has all the support she needs right now. And standing at so far $80,000, give or take, how much more love can you show? Dave Meltzer is reporting that Cesaro is completely fine after he was apparently injured. He took what happened to be a off-the-mark double foot stomp from Ricochet, which led to Cesaro rolling himself out of the match. I guess we'll find out this Monday night if Cesaro makes a return. But there was another injury to report as former IWGP Intercontinental Champion Ibushi miraculously only suffered a black eye after a high-risk maneuver from Naito during their match last week. This was after Ibushi took an extremely dangerous German suplex to the apron. And I didn't see the footage, but from what I read, it was a nasty-looking bump. And Ibushi only suffered a black eye, which sounds, that within itself, a miracle. Well, I finally found Access TV on my cable box. Apparently there was some kind of technical issues until recently, but good timing too, as I found out there are upcoming changes for airtimes for Women of Wrestling and New Japan Pro Wrestling, as both shows will be moved to Saturday nights starting on July 13th, with the Season 2 premiere on September 7th for WOW at 8 p.m. There will be an 8-week recap of Women of Wrestling Season 1 that will begin on July 13th at 8 p.m. Night 1 of the G1 Climax 29 tournament will broadcast live from Dallas on July 6th at 6 p.m. And for the first time ever, Access TV will air same-day real-time coverage of the G1 Climax events kicking off on July 13th at 9 p.m. Also, in case you missed it, and I'm not going to get into any spoilers as originally planned, but Access TV will air the entire Domain 6.9 from Osaka, Japan. The first 2 hours will air at 8 p.m. tonight, matter of fact, and the second half will air on June 21st at 8 p.m. So no spoilers here. But from what I read, it was an epic show. All the championship matches were very exciting and entertaining, including Jon Moxley's first match in New Japan. So set your DVRs for the debut of Jon Moxley, the former Dean Ambrose, in New Japan Pro Wrestling. In an interview with ESPN, Chris Cyborg revealed that she has plans to test her free agency after her next bout in MMA, as she is set to face Felicia Spencer at UFC 240 on July 27th. And then her current contract will be up. So what will be next? Well, after her loss to Amanda Nunes, she revealed that she's going to talk to other MMA organizations and even pro wrestling organizations to see what could be next for Cyborg. She said it's hard to be a pro wrestler. They work very hard. They're very athletic. Maybe I did training before a little bit. So it's been speculated for years, rumored, if you will, Becky Lynch and Chris Cyborg might have a possible match at a WrestleMania for the past couple of years. Obviously, that's never happened. But it makes you wonder, what would it be like to have yet another successful MMA fighter added to the female roster of the WWE? More than likely will probably be a heel because, she's foreign and can't speak English right. And just to dominate, similar to how Ronda Rousey did for nearly a year. Not that she debuted and was already champion. But maybe we can have the Chris Cyborg Ronda Rousey match in WWE instead of UFC or Bellator, which I doubt that they will ever sign with, for this match anyway. Similar to not having the Shamrock Severin 3 match that they kind of teased but never went for, which I thought was ridiculous for them not to do back in 96, 97. They should have tried at least. They teased it on the Monday Night Raw, but it never happened. I think the Nation of Domination interfered and Owen Hart at the time, and it was just nonsense as to why it never happened. Shawn Spears, the former Ty Dillinger in WWE, has officially signed with AEW following the premiere episode of Road to Fyter Fest. AEW announced that Spears is officially part of their roster, so congratulations are in order. Speaking of AEW, according to WrestleZone.com, All Out has sold out in 15 minutes. They did it again. The company sold out the event in just 2 matches announced prior to today's public ticket sale. The newly announced matchup of Jon Moxley versus Kenny Omega and Chris Jericho versus Adam Hangman Page for the AEW heavyweight title will take place on August 31st. That is amazing. And once again, showing the haters and naysayers that AEW cannot succeed. It's still very young. Yes, they've had their issues or problems or lack thereof during the first ever official pay-per-view. And hopefully from the feedback, they can learn from other mistakes and make it even a more solid show. But they got this. AEW does. They got it by the balls, as they say. And off to the races. And personally, I can't wait till the first ever TV episode on TNT coming up in September. And I'll end with this, and also in relation to AEW. Tony Khan, president and CEO of AEW Wrestling, will be on Steve Austin's podcast on the Steve Austin Show June 18th. As both men will have a conversation, obviously, about AEW and among other things that I'm sure the topics will be what led to his involvement, his relationship with Cody and the Bucks and Kenny Omega, and all things pro wrestling. So there's a plug there for you. June 18th, Tony Khan, CEO and president of AEW Wrestling on the Steve Austin Show. So with that said, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. If you like what you hear, hit that like button and subscribe to the Good Old JM channel. You can follow me throughout social media as listed in the description below. And until next time, everyone, behave and be good.
Open my eyes, leave it all behind. So open your mind.